All right. Folks, thanks for joining us today for PM School's first star session of the year 2024. We're super glad to have you all join us today. Of course, as you can hear, I'm not very well, but I'm super happy to be here hosting this session with Dileep, who is going to walk us through product management processes, which are critical for building SaaS products. It's going to be quite comprehensive and knowledge-packed session today. Please brace yourself for the next 60 minutes, where a lot of information will be shared with all of you. Just a little bit about PM School itself. We are Asia's largest product community today, having over 100,000 active community members across India and parts of Asia and US as well. We run an 8-week hardcore bootcamp program to help aspiring product managers bag their dream product management jobs. Should you be interested, please reach out to Priyal from my team. You would have already received an invite over email from Priyal. You can reply to that, I would say, email if you have any questions, if you're curious to know more about the live cohort program. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dileep. Dileep, please. Thanks for joining us today. It's our pleasure to have you on this platform. And the second bit, we're looking forward to today's session. Over to you.
Same here, Kushal. So first of all, thank you, PM School, for setting up this platform. Like not just this talk, I think having such connections in the industry where they can invite PMs from different companies, share their perspective. Like across the industry, across the company, the PM roles look very, very different. Just having this perspective from different people, sharing it with the students, I think that's a great platform itself. And PM School is doing a tremendous job in like just enabling everyone to share this information. So thanks to PM School for that. Also, thank you to everyone who has joined after their long day, middle of the week. They have, after their offices, after their classes, they have been able to take out time for, listening to this, going through, like while I go through the presentation, talk about things which I've done and share some learning. Thank you everyone for joining in after the long day. All right, with that, let's get started. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. I put together this presentation. We'll try to use this as a base and talk about a few things. Now, the specific thing we are going to talk about is the processes we use in product management. And, there is so much material available now on the internet around the best practices, etc. So this is an attempt to have just put together whatever I know, rather than using any model, just telling them what is the day-to-day job, how do we run these processes, how do we create these processes. We have iterated on them to see some success. So these are some of the things which I would like to share with the audience here, and up for any questions. If you need any clarifications, etc., you can take it up. You can pause in between a few sections and take some questions. All right. When we talk about the product management processes, this is my personal goal, right? By the end of this session, everybody who's listening to this, they should understand how B2B product processes work. So that is something which I have done in the past. I've worked in the SaaS environment, created these processes, worked on these processes. I want to give away that learning to everyone. If these are applicable, again, every company operates in a different way. If these processes are useful for you, go ahead, try to implement it in your day-to-day job. The third part of knowing the process is that you should be able to tell everyone around you that how these processes work. So unless you create a process, educate everyone around them, about these processes in your team, these will not be successful. So you should understand that while you create a process, you should also be able to communicate it. Fourth, take it with a pinch of salt. It's not a universal process. So benchmark it against what other companies are doing, what other PMs are saying, compare these processes and see what works for you personally. Last thing, the processes are always evolving. Like every process you create comes with an expiry date. You don't know the expiry date, but you know that someday it will expire. I'm trying to, stop them again. But anyways, this should be good now. It should work now. The annotations were on, so yeah, let's go ahead. Okay, so the context of this presentation, it's basically a B2B SaaS company in the CRM category. The primary targets are the SMB market and the enterprise customers, like equal. We created the product for both of them. The main functions in the org, these are product team, engineering teams, account managers, or sometimes called customer success managers. There's a support team. If somebody has questions, they can reach out to support for the questions. There's sales and marketing. And of course, these are big divisions, these are big functions. But for the context of this presentation, we'll use these as major functions. They further break out. For example, engineering breaks out into backend, front-end, QA. Account managers break out into different size of accounts. Support team also breaks out. There's sales team which breaks out. But for this presentation, this context would be enough that there are different functions in place. The next thing is there is a typical quarterly planning, like planning for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. The launches typically are monthly, so that's the context. And the size of the team we are talking about, it's a mid-sized company, around 120 people in product and engineering. And that is where these processes were applicable. Now, let's look at the full value chain of building a product. There's a product vision in place, which decides where do we want to go. There's a product strategy on how do we reach there. In this session, we'll be focusing on the bottom part of it, which is more related to the execution. So a lot of that product strategy vision, while it is top down in some cases where we look at the size of the market and we say this is where we want to head, a lot of that context on the strategy and vision also comes from the execution. So this is a core part of how the product organization operates, which churns a lot of products, a lot of insights, which empowers the strategy and vision. So for this session, we'll be focusing on the product execution part, which is basically assuming that a bit of product vision strategy that is in place. And now we are trying to make it successful, which is saying, let's go. Now, product execution itself, we'll be talking about these 4 phases. Road mapping, like what do we plan to do? Second, the planning itself. Once we have decided that these are the things which we want to do, when will we actually do it? The delivery is basically doing it. And we'll talk about that in more detail. And finally, the launch. So let's tell everyone that it's done. A lot of people in the company, outside the company, needs to know that the features are live, the products are live, and how do they use it. So this is going to be our context. Open to questions at this one point in time. I'm not sure if it is even allowed right now, given the security restrictions we have given. But yeah, feel free to go and use LinkedIn, post your comments there. I'm sure Kushal and team will be able to pick it up.
Yep. Or you could drop your comments in the chat section, and we'll pick them up to answer them.
Right. Yeah, maybe Kushal. I think I have stopped the activity, so comments might not come in.
Okay.
All right. Anyways, let's go next. We shall keep me honest. If we are going too fast, if something is not clear, just point that out, and I can.
Will do. I think we are doing good.
Cool. All right. Now, for the context, we'll start with the road mapping and the planning. It's the first stage of the presentation. We talk about road mapping and planning together. Second, we'll talk about the delivery processes. And the third, we will talk about the launch processes. Now, even in terms of processes, we'll talk about how do we run these processes, and we will talk about who are the owners of those processes, who actually runs it. So what do we do in these processes, and who is the person who's actually responsible for doing it? Now, first, let's talk about the road mapping process, right? This typically starts around 2 months before the quarter begins, where we start gathering all the ideas we have. And again, just to remind you the context, we know where we want to head, we know what is the strategy. It is basically how do we make that strategy successful, how do we meet product goals. So that is where we have already started the road mapping process, keeping a product goal in mind. Now, the first step itself is Q-2, 2 months before the quarter begins. We start generating a long list of ideas, which is basically talking to everybody in the company, trying to generate what are the long list of these? Like, what are the feature requests which are coming from different places? What are the priorities for the leadership? What are the priorities for the account managers? What are the customers asking for? What are the feature requests in place? What are the priorities for the engineering team? What are the usability things design wants to address? So we gather these feature requests. The outcome of this process is we'll have a potential long list of features, 40, 50, 60, depending on the size, but it's a long list of consideration. Now we get to the next part. So the general idea is we start cutting it short. Like from a long list, we have some criteria to, let me refresh this. I have updated this slide earlier. This is the new one. Anyways, we're still talking about the same idea. Okay, so from the long list, we get to a short list. And the way to get to the short list is looking at a few factors. Probably people would have heard about the RICE model. So it's a similar kind of thing. Not explicitly RICE all the time, like not using that framework all the time, but a few things which we assess is like how many customers is it going to impact? How aligned is it to the goal of the overall product? What is the feasibility of the feature? And what is the level of effort required? So depending on these factors, from a long list, we create a short list of these projects. And these short lists are the one which we are going to take up in the next quarter. The third step and the third milestone is prioritizing them. So prioritizing them means that while we have the short list, we cannot do everything, right? And we have to be very judicious about what can we actually commit to. So looking at our resources, how much can the team pick up? What is going to be the impact? We categorize these projects into P1, P2, P3. Now, what do these P1, P2, P3 means? So P1 means these are the projects, or these are the problems we will solve, right? No matter what happens, every quarter, these are set in stone. We are not going to miss it. The second are P2, which are 50-50 goals. We said these are the features we'll try to achieve as much as possible, but some of these projects are marked P2 because there is a probability that either we might cancel them out, or we might adjust the scope, or we just, because of the feasibility or anything else, these are something which are not 100% confirmed. So these are 50-50. The P3 priorities are basically small pebbles, right? When we say P3, because we are moving through the quarter and we want to be agile, we do not want to leave any feedback on the table, which can be important for the product. So P3 are the goals, P3 are the projects, which are very likely, like if something new comes up, these are the first projects which will be moved out. Let's say if there's cancellation request coming in from large account. So there is this room for moving these P3s and not touch P1 and P2s. So this is how the priorities happen on the shortlisted projects. The next stage is planning, which is basically, prioritizing these projects, that is taken as input, and the launch date is estimated. Now keep in mind that even at this point in time, we do not know what exactly are we going to build. It's a very high level scope. We know the problem. We know a very dotted solution, as much as saying that, just 4 or 5 line of solution saying, okay, this is what we want to build. But the project actually is not scoped out. With the planning, we can break these quarterly launches into monthly launches. We can say this is the first month. These are the set of P1, P2, P3 projects which we are targeting in the first month. And we have a set for the second month, and we have set for the third month. The next step is probably just making everybody informed about the overall priority, telling everybody in the company on what is coming up so that they can align their initiative with the product team. The next is the monthly roadmap update. Again, as the name says, there are changes which happen in the roadmap. As a product team, it is our responsibility to keep people updated, and we publish these monthly updates to everyone so that they know what is happening on the product side. And the last it's not a milestone, but yeah, a new request come in and there's a process needed for that. And we have briefly touched upon this, that there might be new feature requests which might come during the course of the quarter. something more strategy from leadership, or a cancellation request from a client. So that is where we take that into consideration, see what are the trade-offs with the P3 projects, where do we stand. So multiple factors come into account, and we keep on adjusting this roadmap for the quarter. We do not, as much as possible, we do not touch P1 and P2s. We just focus on the P3s. That's the first part of the road mapping process. Open to any questions if people have any, or else we can go to the part B of the road mapping process. Yeah, Kushal, should we move on?
Ansha, any questions from LinkedIn?
No, Kushal.
All right.
Let's move on. The second part of it. Let me refresh this as well. All right. Now, we talked about the process. I briefly described the process in terms of the milestones, what is the input, what are the activities we do in those milestones, and what is the outcome. Now, let's talk about the second part, that, okay, these things need to be done, but who is going to do it? Now, the simplest way to see this is like the RACI metrics, RCI. We are saying people who are responsible for doing it, people who are kept in the loop, who are consulted, who are collaborative in that process. And the third part is informed. So, okay, this color coding is slightly messed up. Sorry for the bad formatting, but yeah, this is the good way of looking at it. Now, the idea generation, like if you look at the whole planning process, the product team is responsible for it. And when I say about the product team, it could be multiple levels, and there could be different people in the team who are responsible for this. For example, if you are setting, if you are setting a roadmap, probably a group PM, a lead PM might be more involved. While we go to, let's say, a monthly product update, somebody else might be driving it. But overall, it's a responsibility of the product team, and it is an internal structure of the product team on how they organize it. And same applies to everybody else. Now, the first step, a lot of things which are, where people are responsible for, it lies in product bucket, except for this consulting bit, the roadmap planning. So let's just go over it and let me just describe this. So idea generation, like product is responsible for this. We consult all the teams. We get long list from everyone. Shortlisting, again, we are responsible for it. Consult the rest of the team. We do our analysis on it, our recommendation, but let people speak up and be a part of the process. So think about this as like dev will have some priorities, leadership will have priorities. There are cost AMs who are responsible for delivering to large customers. They will want to have a say in the roadmap. So we open this channel, have this bridge where people come in and have their ideas in. In terms of prioritization, in most cases, we do consult the dev team and we consult the AM team, because AM teams will know which are the most important customers, what is the biggest risk of churn. Dev will know the estimates, and they will know the tech projects. So we work very closely with dev and AM for prioritization. Design and leadership is involved, but typically they are informed. Like it's easy to assess, the priorities from the design team as well. So typically they are kept in the loop in terms of information. They are consulted, but not as intensely as we discuss it with dev and AMs. Let's go here again. The roadmap planning. So planning is more related to the delivery. So excuse the color formatting here, but if you look at this, the team which is responsible for this is the development team. So they decide the planning, what are they going to launch when, because they are the biggest, driver in this. Let's say if they put a launch date to something targeted in the second month, the product and design can align with them rather than driving it from their end, because these are the biggest blocks